Good morning. It's 9 o'clock. This is the regular meeting of Mills County Commissioners Court, Monday, April 25th. We have present in the courtroom, besides myself as the county judge, all four commissioners, the county treasurer, and the county clerk. And if y'all would join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Commissioner Williams, would you lead us in prayer?
Yes. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you have granted us. Father, thank you for the rain that you have given us on this county. Father, please extend a little bit more kindness and give us a little bit more. Father, be with us today as we do the business of Mills County. Guide us and direct us in all our actions. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Just a couple of reminders before we dive into the agenda. First of all, if you've got a cell phone with you, if you would please mute it. And secondly, as we if we have anybody speaking from the audience, we have to use the microphone that's up here on the podium. We can hear you just fine here in the courtroom, but the people that are watching this either recorded or YouTube, it's just dead silence if you're not on that mic. So that's the reason, and it's important. Okay, we are in session with a quorum. We have the county attorney with us. And item 2 on the agenda is review and act on the minutes of April 11th and April 12th. Let's do these one at a time. Starting with the April 11th minutes, as the court had the opportunity to review.
I got a correction on mine, Sonia. That was install a tin horn, not a catalog.
I'm so sorry. I will fix that.
Any other corrections or additions? Is there a motion to
I
approve?
move we approve the minutes as presented with that one correction.
Okay, a motion from Commissioner Guerin to approve with the correction of the cattle guard to a tin horn. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Williams. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we've approved the minutes of April 11th. Let's look at April 12th now. This was the public hearing and subsequent action on the new subdivision ordinance. Are there any corrections or additions?
I make a motion to approve that.
We have a motion from Commissioner Williams to approve the minutes of April 12th. Is there a second?
I'll say.
Second from Commissioner Guerin. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we have approved the minutes. Audience with individuals, Ms. Scott, did we have anybody sign up to speak?
No, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so we have nothing on item 3. Number 4 is approval of accounts payable. These were distributed electronically from the treasurer's office Friday. Any questions on it's called the unpaid invoice report dated April 22nd.
You can see on page 4, precinct 4. Next to last one there, John Deere maintainer arrived this last week at 670G. And you can see the total there.
Fuel cost, it was mass, wasn't it?
249,000. Yes, it is nice. 2,000 gallons of fuel up there on the top. That comes out at $4.64.
Any other questions on or comments on the accounts payable report? If not, is there a motion for approval?
Make a motion to approve the council table.
We have a motion from Commissioner Wright. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Williams. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we have approved the accounts payable. 5, accept donations. There's 2 donations listed, each in the amount of $5,000. One is from Castle Gap Wind Power LLC. That's the developer of the Blue Bonnet project out in the Payne Gap area. And the second one, also in 5,000, is IEA Management. That is the general contractor on that same project. And the explanation that came with the checks, and it was verbal, was this was a donation to, they've made donations to fire departments. They wanted to make a donation to the county for the work time and equipment wear and tear that Precinct 2 put into fighting that fire.
Well, I'd like to publicly thank those guys for doing that. That was awful nice.
So is this just going in the general fund, sir? Yes,
Actually going to donation lines of precinct 2.
into precinct 2.
Yes, sir. Unless y'all want to do it some way different.
Yeah, the checks were a little strange. They're made out to Mills County Precinct 2 Fire Department.
Hello, Chief.
That's what
Yeah.
Might as well be a fire department, but sorry. Sometimes it feels like you are.
I don't have any problems.
You lost a tire on your maintainer in this
Yeah.
fight, so you got to replace that.
I'm gonna replace several tires, probably.
Okay.
That heat, fighting those fires really messes up those tires.
I make a motion, we accept the donations from Castle Gap Wind Power LLC and IEA Management.
We have a motion from Commissioner Williams. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Commissioner Wright. All in favor, say aye.
Uh,
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, number 6, consider act on purchase of equipment haul trailer. Commissioner Williams, this was your item.
Yeah, so we've got two haul trailers that are been approached us. One is local. It's Central Texas Telephone Co-op. This trailer is a not drop deck, but front deck lays down on the ground and you have a winch that pulls it up. I do not have any pictures on it. It was in the back of the yard. The price of that is $10,000. Am I correct, Bill, on this? And then there's some extra stuff. Hub and drum assembly, brake shoe kit, and 4 tires. Free and 1 free hub brings it to $11,672.68.
The accessories or the extras is optional.
Yeah.
The trailer's actually 10,000 if you didn't want that and stuff.
So there's that one. The truck that would be able to use that one is the Mormon truck in Precinct 3, which has a big Tulsa winch on it so that we can use that. That trailer will haul just about anything that we can think of to use. It used to haul their big rock saw that they use. The other one I sent, and it should be in your picture of your packet, that is from Southwest Equipment Sales. And he called me last Thursday. And when we bought the last belly dump, we were talking about it, and he found this one that come in on trade. As you can see, it's a drop deck, 35-ton trailer, and with a 10-foot drop deck on top. It's got dovetail in the back. Anything else that y'all want to see? And it's $22,000. the difference when this trailer is you don't have to have a winch to load it and unload it. You don't have to have a special person or anything like that. Anybody can do it. The other side to this one is that it can take any of the 4 trucks that we have in our precincts to use to drive it. It doesn't have to be just the one Mormon trailer. So
Who did you say was the second option from?
it's Southwest Texas Truck and Trailer, and they're outside of Clyde. Your old stomping grounds are, Kinfolk stomping grounds are. Anyway, so I just wanted to show that to everybody. And since we were discussing those trailers.
So the difference is, number one, it's price. One's 10,000, one's or 10 or 11,000, one's 22. And the other difference is the one that requires the cable winch. We have one truck in the county that can do that or that is equipped for that. And it takes special operator skills, and the other trailer fits every truck, every haul truck in every precinct. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I like the Central Texas one the best. It's a lot better trailer. Y'all, you've been in K. Lynn's plant. Have any of y'all been in a Toka's plant? I have. It's in Atoka, Oklahoma. They don't build the quality of trailer that K. Lynn does. And as far as the winch goes, we can add a winch to none of the other trucks if we need to. I think we're better off saving the taxpayers $11,000 or 12, whatever it is, and use the Central Texas trailer.
Commissioner Garrett, Park, you started to say something?
The one truck that me and Jason purchased could have a hydraulic winch deal put on it, but that's around 10 grand, I think. We've got one trailer with ramps. To me, even though the other trailer has to be winched up with a pole back, they're very easy to load. I would be extremely concerned about heading up these ramps on something that weighed 45,000 pounds. Then when you get up to here, it's going to have that breakover point and where you're going to bounce down on that trailer. Now, the other guys may be used to it, but I'd be a little concerned when that thing starts breaking over.
As far as safety, the folding deck's the safest one.
It's easy to load.
If you're gonna get in the bind, loading something, most generally it's where it breakover point.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, truck wise, I've offered the Mormon if the county wants to use or whatever. It's an old truck. As far as I know, it's mechanically sound, but it's local. It don't need to go anywhere except in the county.
Is it licensed? DOT?
No.
Not DOT.
Is any of our trucks DOT for this trailer?
I don't know about DOT, but they're all inspected and
Well,
licensed.
I know they're just,
Well, there's a
they're all
difference.
licensed.
The trailer that we're talking about, yeah, no, I don't figure any of yours are they?
Mine are.
Your dump truck?
Mine are dumps.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
big dump truck.
Are they DOT'd?
Yes, I take them inside them, they have them.
So you have a DOT number?
No, sir.
Well, then they're not
They're not
DOT.
But they are
They're inspected,
inspected over at Cincinnati.
right, but they're not, they don't have a DOT number on.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
Well, the big truck does, but the little ones don't.
And I'm sure the Central Texas trailer and probably this other one are DOT inspected.
Are they supposed to be though? That's what I'm asking, I guess.
I don't know about the DOT, but they're supposed to be inspected.
Well, I know
Yeah.
that, but they're pulling a trailer on the weight. I thought they had to be DOT. Whether in the county or whether they're outside the county. As long
It
as
wouldn't be
they're on
hard.
public
Both of our trucks, both of the trucks that we've got over there
could be DOT tomorrow, so.
But but you're doing the DOT on?
We've just locally inspected them.
That's why I do my smaller dump truck. That's right.
Well, I think we're getting a little off track. That's a valid point on the inspections and the truck certification, but the issue on the agenda is to buy or not buy one of two trailers. And now maybe that decision drives some other things we need to do on trucks. But since we're hauling the same equipment weight, regardless of which trailer we buy, that's going to come up. I think that's independent of this decision. So is the proposal, Commissioner Williams, where does the money come from?
The money's out of the road and bridge equipment money.
Is there remaining equipment money to do this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's a question of which and do you have a recommendation?
I don't, I can go either way.
Well, I move, we buy the Centex trailer. That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Gearing to purchase the Central Texas trailer, and we have a second from Commissioner Parton. Is there any further discussion? Okay, well, let's vote then. All in favor of purchasing the equipment haul trailer from Central Texas Telephone Co-op for $10,000.
Well,
Okay, well then let's go back to the motion. What was your motion? The trailer or the trailer and the equipment?
Well, it's separate, isn't it?
Well, I don't
They,
The trailer's 10,000.
the trailer's one deal and the equipment's the stuff would be
Well, that's not on the agenda.
separate. I
Okay,
think, wouldn't it? The separate
Okay.
motion.
so we're just dealing with the trailer. then.
Yeah, with the
Your
trailer.
motion was the $10,000 trailer from Central Texas.
Right.
Okay, and that was your second, Commissioner Parton. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Okay, we got a third eye down there. Commissioner Wright, did you
I didn't vote.
didn't
No.
vote?
No, you didn't ask for a no. but I'll-
Okay, well, I'm going to get there. I just didn't want to hear it.
No, I didn't vote yes.
All opposed?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 3 in favor, 1 opposed. I'm going to abstain. I believe this is a decision the commissioners should make, and that's the way we set up the funds in Road and Bridge. So this has been approved to purchase the Central Texas equipment trailer by a vote of 3 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstention. So moving on. Number 7, discuss, I'm
Are
sorry.
you going to vote on the accessories now?
It wasn't listed on the agenda, and so, no.
Thank you.
Number 7, discussion. This is Commissioner Parton's suggestion of a common policy and pricing for the installation of tin horns in county roads. Just to focus the discussion, Commissioner Parton and I put a rough outline in the agenda outlining our current practice, some of the problems that are coming up, and some possible solutions. Let me turn it over to Commissioner Parton.
Okay, it seems like since I've started, maybe it wasn't like that before, but I think everybody probably agreed that a good many years ago, somebody might buy a place and need a tin horn put in. Well, it wasn't that big a deal because you're probably looking at 2, maybe 3 a year. Now, when we start putting tin horns in, it's usually the subdevelopments that are creating them. Well, we've got 1 mile stretch of road over there on Indian Springs where we have 8 tin horns in that 1 mile stretch. Now, those people were very good to work with. They furnished the dirt to cover them. But when we go out and put a 10 horn in, by the time we move our equipment and have to purchase a load of dirt, if we don't have some dirt from some other means, we've got 2 hands a day's labor, our diesel, our load of dirt, our equipment. And I just feel like we've got 6 or 7 to put in right now that people are hollering about. And not a one of them really is pertaining to making our road or our drainage better. Some of them are actually hampering it as far as I'm concerned. But I think it's costing the county a good bit of money, the amount of them that we're having to do and why we're having to do them. So we'd had enough stuff on the plate here for a good while. It seems like it might be kind of easing down a little bit, but I just like the other commissioners' take. I know it's been done for free for years. I did talk to one contractor that was putting one in for some people, and I said, if you don't mind me asking, what do you charge? And he said, well, this one turnkey, and that's them buying the 10 horn, was $2,000. Well, that's roughly a $500 to $600 10 horn that they're purchasing. What we've done ever since I've been here, and I don't know how far back, the landowner buys the 10 horn, the county puts it in for free. But I really think that was prior to the subdevelopment deal.
So,
Anybody's
yeah, so
take?
your take is it's taken, just on what you have on your plate, 6 or 7 man days of a month out of working on roads and put it in to 10 horn installation.
Yeah.
So basically the road maintenance is suffering.
Well, we're trying, but I just think it's county money that the county is costing itself. You know, and I mean, Gerald said we don't have to put them in, but it's always just been kind of a good faith deal. But I've got 2 that we need to put in, have to put in for landowners. We've agreed to. Then neither one of those 10 horns are in good places. And one of them we've had to order what we call a collapsed 10 horns because it's solid rock up on the ledge. So we're not digging it down. We can't. We don't have the means. But we're having to put them in places that does not really benefit your drainage. And so I just kind of wanted to get everybody's feedback as to whether they think we'll do them, but I think that the county is losing a good bit of money and a good bit of manpower time doing this stuff.
Well, it's on the agenda because this is the only way to discuss it among ourselves. It's only on the agenda for discussion. So I think the issues are continue the status quo, recognizing the change in volume, price for doing this to get money to offset some of the cost involved, or get out of the business because in effect we're competing with private contractors and let other people do it. So it's just
TxDOT,
where do we want to
TxDOT
start?
used to put them in years ago, and then you had to buy them, and then you bought them, and then TxDOT put them in. And then it went to TxDOT you had to hire a contractor. They don't even put them in anymore. But then it has to meet their specs on TxDOT. That's from there. We just put one in, and we used a backhoe and one motor grader to get it put in and redo the road and get it shaped and stuff. And that took us about 2 hours to do that, but it took us an hour to get the equipment out there and an hour to get it back. So a half a day just to do that one horn. And it took us 20 yards of material to do that entrance.
When you say materials, was that
Crushed bought material that we bought and got out there. And so that's and that's $8.50 a yard. So if you do the labor and all that other stuff at a minimum, we're at about $800. If I'm doing the math correctly. Now, if we'd have had the big haul trailer, we might could have taken, instead of roading that backhoe all the way out there or whatever, you know what I'm saying? It might have saved some time and it might have saved an hour instead of roading it all the way to Evan, other side of Evan. But
I don't care either way whether they charge or don't charge. My concern is that they're installed correctly. And, you know, that's the only thing I have concerns on, because I've seen some of them not say anything to a commissioner, go ahead and put a horn in, and they're undersized a lot of times. Now you would go to the landowner and tell them to pull them up, you know, but I just want to make sure they're installed correctly so water won't come across our county road, run across the county road. That's on my concern. But either way, that makes me any difference with charge or don't charge.
Gerald, can we make them pull them up if they put them in and we weren't aware of them?
Well, the
Since we-
railroad, not the railroad, the county road right of way belongs to the county.
Okay.
And anything that any landowner tries to do in that right of way that's not authorized by the county, yeah, you can take it out. We've had those arguments before. I mean, if you're gonna let the landowner install their own pin horn, then there really needs to be some specifications, some approval process. I think it would be great to have a county-wide policy
Yeah.
on pin horns, whatever it is, that's published so that landowners could know what to expect when they're dealing with pin horns. But, yeah, I mean, if somebody goes out there and tries to install their own pin horn, you don't like it, take a motor grader, take it out. That right of way belongs to the county. And the only way anybody has any authorization to do anything in that right of way is if the county blesses it. Whether it's a gate entrance or a pin horn or a cattle guard or anything else. And I think as commissioners, you guys all need to protect that right and make sure that nobody tramples on it. I know people have a tendency to build a new fence and they creep out a little closer to the floor ditch. Well, you can't tolerate that. So I think you need a policy, whatever it is, that everybody can expect and understand what it is, even if it means like maybe looking at desktop requirements and maybe copying them so that you guys don't even have to install tin horns anymore. Make them get their own contractor to do it according to the specifications that are submitted, some sort of approval process. So I really think it'd be a good idea to have some sort of definite policy that's county-wide.
The cattle guards, we've done that with the cattle.
Yeah, that's what
guards.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
That, you know, the landowner is responsible for it with our approval. We have specs.
Did y'all have any trouble out there on y'all's bill on 510, 505? Didn't y'all replace or put some on my notes? And they'd already
They-
put one in.
What it is, we put in, I guess, 2 for the landowners that's bought property out there. And of course, I tell them the dimensions, they have to deliver the tin horn. And what I do, and I've told the court this before, I use that textile material that they deliver. I don't just put it out on the roads. I use it for my entrance. And I get the material from the city of Govey from the cemetery, and that's what I use for field. So it's really not costing the county anything except our labor for, you know, time of our equipment.
And diesel.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's part of labor and material. I mean, labor and truck, yeah.
Commissioner Guerin, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I agree with what Gerald said. We need to have the final say so needs to be through the commission. You know, where at the placement of them. I've got one road out there. It's got 3 and a mile and a half, and the water won't run through none of them. So we didn't put them in. You know, they're from the treasure back away from the ditch. I mean, you know, they're useless. And we need to have some, TxDOT's got some rules on its size and what TxDOT's theory is, if it has to be small enough that a car tire won't fall in the hole. And if it's over 24 or something, they have to have bars across it, you know, to where if the car runs in the ditch, it won't catch the front tire and flip it. You know, that's their main deal. But they will take one out if you put it in without their permission.
Well, head walls on them too, don't they make you pour a head wall on?
On certain sides.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we'll put this on the agenda for approval once we get a draft. Who's
Right.
going to volunteer to draft something? I'll help.
I'll work on it.
Okay. Anything, so we will pull something together and get it back on the agenda
Okay.
for
That's
approval
probably the best
as a
thing to do.
county policy. Okay, anything else on the tin horn insulation discussion? Number 8 is consider an act on participating agency agreement, capital area regional advisory council. This came in from the sheriff's department. It's in your package. Sheriff Hammond, could you address this? He's not there.
Sheriff
Okay.
Hammond's not in the court.
I'm sorry, I couldn't see.
He's not in, I don't think anybody can law enforcement.
Well,
Except maybe.
Ms. Gerber, are you familiar with this proposal with the,
I think that we had an agreement before, this was just
So maybe I'm not finding it, Judge, but it doesn't have the dates when it starts or.
Oh.
Because if you go to that second page, it says when it ends and we sign this contract, it doesn't say when it begins or ends.
yeah, it says on the cover letter, it's set to expire June of 22.
Yeah, it expires.
So that
If
means
we're
we,
signing the new one, it doesn't say how long it lasts.
This one say 18 to 22.
yeah,
But
that's the one that's
It's
expiring.
gonna expire.
So, I mean, I know what the rack is. That's a sort of a coordination of the various trauma centers, the hospitals in our 7-county district. But other than that, I don't know anything about this. I assume law enforcement would address it. So,
I mean,
You
I remember signing it on the court and that it was, you know, to be incumbent, they're gonna help us with emergency situations, but it doesn't have. The last page shows that when you sign it, but it doesn't say when it ends or begins or anything.
County clerk signs it.
well, maybe we need to table this pending.
I mean,
Better
unless I'm reading it
presentation.
wrong.
Yeah, I also read that
Why would you do that?
it's a commitment to pay for something, but they're a good faith effort to cover it with grants. So
And
I
as
don't
far as
know.
I know, I don't think we've ever had to use this agreement. But I could be wrong on that too. I've never seen it come across. Do we don't have an account or anything somewhere that's ever billed to CATRAC chapter?
not off the top of my head. no.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
No, they asked us for a contribution last year and I declined because it wasn't in the budget and then made a personal contribution to them. Let's,
I'll make a motion to table.
we have a motion from Commissioner Parkin to table,
I'll second it.
a second from Commissioner Guerin. As further discussion, I'll talk to Sheriff Hammond, see if we can get more explanation and get this back on the agenda with more facts. All in favor, okay, so we have a motion and a second to table. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Consider an act participation agreement with Tyler Technologies. This involves the judicial system and it's come in through the district clerk, Ms. Scott.
What would you like to know? So there's something called Uniform Case Management System.
So right now, there's 254 counties in the state of Texas, and we have to report to CJIS, which is your Criminal Justice Information System. So basically, the Texas Court Administration has decided that they do not want to receive 254 different reports from 254 different counties. And so they went out and they approved 3 providers to do this. And they are going to be moving everyone to one of the 3 approved systems. So currently we use LGS. LGS was not an approved system by the Texas courts.
Of course.
And so they are trying to get a unified case management program going. They understand that smaller counties below 20,000 do not have the IT structure to get this done. And so they are willing to pay for this. They are willing to pay for our contract fees with one of the approved systems if we'll move over. And the window to do this is 5 years, but there is an option for it to be extended for another 2 years. So we don't have to do it now, but they would like for us to do it now and get moving. They're targeting all these small counties. We've already gone through several webinars on it. It's supposed to streamline our reporting. This system tracks how we close cases. And we have to be above a certain percentage. It's 90%, a 5-year average, to qualify for grant funding.
Does that cross all of our courts, justice court, county court, and district court?
I'm not sure about justice, but I do know county and district. And so this is supposed to help streamline because it's going to directly load into their system. I would like to proceed with this. The other reason we were trying to get this done now is Brown County is part of our 35th judicial district. So this would put Mills and Brown County on the same system. So Judge Mike Smith, the court coordinators, the indigent defense coordinator, will be able to log on and see whatever's going on in a case right now. They can do that now with LGS, but it costs us extra money.
Let me throw in a few things. First of all, our district judge is on the statewide coordinating committee, and he is obviously an advocate of it. The state is funding the grant money to make this, to do this. So there's no cost other than work in the clerk's office. The issue is going to be that this is installed, and this is the company that now produces and operates e-file, which is a system lawyers throughout the state use, and we use it. But this is a go forward. Once it's done, every case that's filed will come in on the system. Every case we now have is going to be on the old system. So for a period of time, that could be years, the clerk's office will be administering 2 systems unless they do a conversion to go back. And I think we did this when we converted the Justice of the Peace Court years ago, go back and convert the existing open cases into this. We don't have the staff or the technology to do that. This company has the ability to do that. I don't know if we got a final proposal yet. It costs money. The grant from the state,
That's not under the grant.
the grant from the state doesn't take care of that part, but that could be a budget discussion going forward. It's independent of this decision. This one is free installation to a state standard of software going forward, but you should expect seeing cost numbers and probably the next year budget discussion, taking our existing case volume, which is meaningful, and moving it to the same system. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
Is this system better than the other 2 systems, or is this the only one that, I mean, I understand Judge
So-
Smith is advocate for this one, but
True. One of the systems is actually, I don't know, I wasn't in the force on this choice. Doesn't really have a presence in the state of Texas. So I don't have any background to go with that. The other system is, I think it was Net Data met the standard. LGS is a little clunky. It only operates on Microsoft Explorer, which is not supported any longer. They haven't transferred it over to any browser system. While customer service has been great with LGS, Tyler Technologies meshes very well with e-filing. As the judge had said, Tyler Technologies also developed e-file, which is the e-file technologies when you file into a court. That's what all your attorneys use. That's what pro se litigants use. It will streamline some of our processes. Yet, do I want to go through a software conversion in a year that I have 4 elections? No. But will it make things better next year? Yes. And the other thing is this is new. If you're the first customer and they're trying to do this conversion, you get a lot of hand holding and we get a lot of people coming down here to help us get through this. We are expecting to have some hiccups in any software conversion. You're going to have some, but we've got the back support to get this done. And it's going to be required in a couple of years. If we can get ahead of this curve and get moving, I think it will go smoother.
Are there questions from the court for the clerk?
I have a question, just from a budget standpoint. It's only going to be covered in full for 5 years.
Possibly 7.
What's the projected cost for that?
Less than what we pay for LGS right now per month. But until we do the conversion of the old files to the new,
You still have LGS.
you still have LGS. The other thing is LGS is required, so the district court only has 1 license because it's a per, when this came through this court and we approved it, they have a per user license fee. The other one is a flat rate across there. So if I want to give the court coordinator, the indigent defense, the sheriff's department, this is your files. As many people as you want set up on it, we will set it up. Where LGS, it's per user. So we pay for Joy, we pay for me, we pay for Julie, we pay for the court. We'll be able to get rid of some of those licenses, which helps drop the cost down. They do it as a monthly fee. If you want to have 50 people signed up, we need Gerald's license to get in there. The county attorney can go get in there. He wasn't signed up.
Well,
Come on.
let's ask the county attorney. Mr. Hale, do you have any input on this?
Does this thing, you're not just talking about sieges, you're talking about all district court stuff,
Yes,
but does it include sieges?
it will report directly to CJIS. CJIS will be able to pull from those reports is what we've been told.
So there would no longer be a separate reporting into the criminal justice system. They would pull from this.
Right, that's why
So
they,
we won't, my office won't be reporting directly to sieges.
I didn't listen to the webinar on what you do, I just listened to the webinar on what I do, but I can find that information out.
Limited explanation. I mean,
Yeah,
you
'cause
guys
I'm
probably
lost,
have
yeah.
no idea what we're talking
Yeah.
about. CJIS is Criminal Justice Information System. Has to do with reporting criminal cases. And let me just briefly explain how it works. It's a handoff situation. The sheriff's office, DPS, whoever it is, when they arrest somebody, when they take them down to the jail, they enter the information in the computer on the arrest. John Doe was arrested for DWI on May the 3rd. The sheriff's office then is through with that CJIS information. It's then handed off to my office. The sheriff's office can't do anything else with CJIS after that. It goes to my office. My office makes a determination whether to file criminal charges or the DA, it's the same way. Whether to indict somebody or dismiss it or change the charge or whatever. Once my office or the DA makes that same entry into CJIS, we're done with it and it's handed off to her office. And then when it gets to her office, then she has to enter the final outcome of that proceeding, convicted 5 years in prison. She enters that into CJIS, and none of us have, I can't have anything to do with the sheriff's office. She can't have anything to do with my office. I can't have anything to do with her office. We're given different login
Accessibilities to the different
information.
systems.
We don't have the ability to go in there and change that, and we shouldn't change it. The way we do it right now in my office, we transmit that information directly to CGIS. We don't go through another software company.
Ours goes through another software. Ours does go through LGS, but you have to kind of go through and manually submit it to CGIS. It's my understanding this new system is going to be able to pull it from your program without a submission.
When I say I do that, online. I do think we need to be on the same system as the district court in Brownwood and the DA's office in Brownwood, because we're all interacting in that program. And I think it would be a train wreck if we were on different.
We are on different systems now, and I will tell you, it is funky. It takes more man hours. It takes more paper. It takes more just coordination. This will streamline some of those processes.
But on the other side, I want to be county attorney for about 2.5 more years. If we're going to put this off for 5 years, I'm on.
No. Brown County is going forward. They would like for us to move with them.
They're already with Tyler Technologies?
They are not.
So they'd be switching.
They will be switching and doing the conversion as well.
And have you talked to the clerk over there? She's all for it.
The DA, the Justice of the Peace, everyone is moving.
So does this affect our justice of the peace?
Our Justice of the Peace was given this information.
I think she's online.
And I believe she reported that she was very happy with the system that she is on now, and she would wait until the end of the period to convert.
And the JP's office is not as involved with this as
Okay.
at all.
Well, she just made a comment that Brown County's JP was doing that, so I didn't know.
But she's already on the approved, one of the approved systems.
Anyway,
Right, yeah.
and we're on a system that is not approved.
Well, I'd move approval of the participation agreement with Tyler Technologies.
My second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we're approved for that participation agreement. Okay, number 10, consider an act on final plat approval for Rolling Oaks subdivision. I see the Rolling Oaks principals here. I would invite you to use the microphone up here at the stand. I'd like to point out to the court that the plat submission was on the dais this morning. And in your package, I tried to go through and I've worked some with Commissioner Wright on this, or tried to, and what we have and don't have with regard to the requirements in this, by the way, is under our 1985 subdivision ordinance, not the one we approved a week ago. So the big thing, and it probably will come up in the discussion, is we do not yet have the blessing from our county designated surveyor, Don King, but there are other steps, things and choice decisions that need to get made. So with that, I see Don Ed Stevens, if you would like to proceed.
Good morning, Justice. Thank you, Commissioners. As you've stated, we don't have the final approval by the county surveyor. So what I'm asking today is that what we'll consider a conditional approval of the final plat pending his outcome of the review and approval of it, as well as our delivery of the construction bond, just as we did on the phase 1 plat.
There's a high-level summary in your package. Just to back up, this is the old C-Bar Ranch. The preliminary plat was I want to say it was 20 round numbers, 2,500 acres, 165 lots. We approved that preliminary plat a year ago. There was a final plat submitted and approved back in November. Shorthand is it's the property primarily on the east side of Highway 183. The whole thing is served by the Corex water system. Save and except some number of lots that had existing wells that are marked on the plat. We have the tax certificates. We have the perk test required under the ordinance. The developer has submitted an estimate of the road cost. This is an action the court needs to take. There's 31,170 feet of roads. Their estimate of the cost of building that is $1,246,800, and that's approximately $40 per lineal foot of roads. Like Commissioner Wright, I mean, since this is the same real estate he's used to building roads in or maintaining roads into a pan on, is that a good number?
Yes.
So one thing that would be appropriate for the court does under the existing ordinance is the court agrees on the amount of the bond. And we have an intent provided in the document to approve a final plat subject to other things. I mean, before we go much further, let me call on County Attorney Hale. If you have input for us, Mr. Hale, we would appreciate it.
Really don't.
So we don't have on here approving the bond today, so we're just approving the final plat. Is that correct?
Look,
One thing that was concerning too, Judge, too, is the perk test, and I think that's been completed now.
yes, the perk tests have been completed and submitted on 10% of the lots. And
Just wasn't marked on the map, correct?
it was not marked on the map. Well, initially it wasn't done. I mean, it was done on the whole subdivision, but when you took out what was done in the previous final, there weren't 10% of this application. So they came back and did more, and then came back and marked it on the plat, which you have.
Yes.
My papers have got too shuffled.
I think the other question too that we talked about is that the survey cost, surveyor Don King, that's a concern too, is it not?
Yeah, well, Mr. King's said his charge is going to be $4,500. I've talked about that with Mr. Stevens. They're willing to pay it. They're looking for an invoice from Mr. King. I don't know if Mr. King's not in the practice of generating invoices. He's used to getting the checks. So I'm going to have to help come up with a way to close that loop. But there's an indicate you guys are willing to pay for the survey.
Yes, sir, absolutely. We just would like him to perform this review in a timely manner. We're glad to pay him as soon as he has a review into your office.
That being said, Mr. King has told me that based on the number of lots, his estimate of reviewing this is going to be 40 to 50 hours. And that's how he came up with his price. So that's basically a week's work. So there's going to be some time involved, but that assumes he does nothing else. And that's not a good assumption because he's the Brown County surveyor. So are other discussion or questions on Rolling Oaks?
Is the deal on the surveyor just that he's backed up, or is there some glitches in what he's doing and what y'all are doing?
Absolutely not. We did not make any substantive changes to the preliminary plat, which he reviewed last year. We did have to adjust some lot lines for drainage purposes, but it did not change the overall number of lots. Lot that remained the same. So it's basically he needs the time to do the verification that there weren't any changes.
And there are a few other things. Number one is that there were some health issues came up with the surveyor that had him out of service for more than a month. And the other thing is he identified some federal issues that may apply to large subdivisions. that are not, that may be his issue as a licensed surveyor, but of course are not addressed in the county's 1985 subdivision ordinance. So he and I and Rolling Oaks and the county attorney are going to have to thread that needle. Those, but you asked, has anything come up? Those are the only things that I'm aware of.
Judge Smith, did you receive the email from our surveyor, Mike Kriegel, which stated that we do not have to operate under the HUD guideline because we are not an intrastate project, we are an interstate project?
I did receive that email. I've tried to read it. That's I recognize that's his assertion. I need to make sure the definitions of what isn't an interstate apply. I mean, some of it will probably depend on who buys your lots and how you market it. But I didn't see how your surveyor could just make that assertion unless you have avoid internet marketing and have instructed not to sell to anybody that's not a resident of Texas.
So no, we've not instructed that we can't sell to anyone that's not a resident of Texas. However, we have limited all of our internet marketing to the state of Texas. We have a specific way we do it, which is called geofencing. And we market to specific target areas. For example, the I-35 corridor from San Antonio to Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got verifiable proofs that we have not marketed outside the state of Texas. Now, if somebody just searches it up on the internet, I mean, I can't help that, but all marketing has only been in Texas.
Okay.
I might add, Judge, and I no way expert on, I think it's called the Interstate Real Estate Sales Fraud Act or something. I don't remember what the name of it is. But basically, it says that any subdivision with over 100 lots is presumed to be engaged in interstate sales of real estate. And the basic requirement, and this is a federal law, this is not state law. It says that any subdivision over 100 lots, unless they're some way exempt, have to file their plan with the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development and get it approved in Washington, D.C. Now, I don't see that that's our issue. I mean, we're just here approving plats and plans for subdivision, and whether or not they comply with HUD is, in my opinion, their problem, not mine. That's what the judge is talking about, and I think there's some discussion in that area, but I don't see that it's really our issue.
I kind of agree with you. I kind of agree with you since it's not in our ordinance or anything like that. That's just, that's a different.
Right. And I'm not asserting it is our issue.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is our designated surveyor who has a stamp and a seal and other licensing has made it his issue. Not made it,
You're
but
exactly
yeah.
right. He's concerned about it, because he doesn't like putting his approval on the plat that he believes fails to comply with the HUD requirements. So maybe there's a misunderstanding between us and him as to exactly what it is that we're wanting him to review. And I suggested that maybe he should limit his review just to the physical characteristics of the subdivision, the streets and boundary lines, et cetera, and let the subdivider worry about satisfaction on their own. Like the judge said, Mr. King spent some time in the hospital recently. I know he's got behind this, and this is a big subdivision which requires a lot of review. So I understand that. That's pretty well what we are.
Well, Mr. Hale, could you maybe give the court some guidance on what actions would be appropriate for us to take at this stage?
Well, I don't know that we should feel comfortable approving the plat, subdivision plat without our representative approving it. I don't know, and I understand.
Is he not?
The time element involved. understand the fact that you want to get this all five center and get it approved. I'm sympathetic to that.
Well, Mr. King hasn't looked at it at all.
Mr. King has
He
it.
looked at it, but not in the detail that.
And Commissioner Wright, have you looked at it and you've done your inspection of it too?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I've looked at
Two
some
of
of it.
us have. Okay.
Yeah, because it's at some point,
We'll wait, like I say, inspection of the maps and stuff, but I have not on site. I'm not doing any on site.
But you really won't go out there until they get their
I can't,
primary,
it's private property, I can't do
yeah,
it.
until they get their primary road base done.
Well,
That's
it's
all
still
I think.
private property. To me, if the gate's closed, it's private property. Now, they've invited me to.
Yeah, but it's on the agenda it's on the subdivision requirements that you have to go out and inspect it along with
But that's after
But
the
that's
subgrade road material is stuff out.
well,
and so,
Mr. Stefan offered when this was coming up late in the week to table this. I suggested we go ahead and talk about it because there are a number of issues here I wanted the court to hear. I think we have the recommendation that the proposed bond amount is reasonable. Whoever asked about it not being specifically listed on the agenda is accurate. The agenda just says consider an act on the final approval, or final plat of Rolling Oak subdivision. So
we can approve that, but we can't approve the bond
well,
today.
we're not, all we'd be approving on that front would be the amount of the bond. There's just, then, once we say 1 million, whatever it is, 246, he's still got to go out and find somebody that'll write that bond, and then that bond actually comes in. But there's no point in the developer seeking the bond until he knows the bond amount is agreeable. So that was one step I was hopeful of getting out of the way. There is, and I'm flipping through it too rapidly in our old ordinance provision that the court takes some preliminary action. Let me find it.
This is a really big subdivision. And I don't know about approving it, just blindly jumping in and approving the plat without having some kind of plat guy look at it and tell us that it's okay. So,
That guy.
A plat guy's a surveyor. Is that-
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And like I say, he really hadn't got to look at it. That's who we're waiting on, is it not?
This
Yes.
also says section 2, are those
I'm sorry.
Phase 2.
section 2, are these different phases in your project?
So there's only 2 phases in the project.
There's 2 phases.
And this is the second and final phase. And everything on the west side of Highway 183 is referred to as section 2. And all of the land that is on the east side of Highway 183 is reported as section 1.
And the east side is the one we did a final plat on, I want to say back last November.
Yeah.
Well, let me try a motion. I move approval of a road bond amount or determination of a road bond amount of 1 million, wherever that number went, 246. And tabling of action on the final plat pending review and approval from the county designated surveyor. Before I ask for a second, Mr. Hale, do you have any proposed?
I think that should be the proper procedure.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second from Commissioner Guerin All in favor, is there any other further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Uh,
Was that opposed?
No. I was-
Okay, so what we've done is said, yes, that's a good bond amount, go find it. I'll call Don King again after this meeting, and would be appropriate at some point to probably schedule with Commissioner White, somebody to take him through the property. And then after I've talked to Don King, I'm assuming his further contact would be with your surveyor, Mr. Kriegel. And you and I can both just keep up with how that goes. But his indication to me was 40 to 50 hours of review.
So do you believe it's realistic we can come back with final plan at the next scheduled meeting?
That's what I was just asking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to work toward that, but I can't commit for,
Well, hopefully.
for somebody else.
Project some timeline. for what's reasonable.
Okay.
I can obtain the bond and have it ready for that day. So
Yeah.
we can wrap it up at the next meeting.
Well, I will work toward that schedule, and I will let you know after I've talked to Mr. King. Thank you.
John, before you
Yes, sir.
leave, can I have your permission to go on the property?
Absolutely. Anytime that's given me or my partner does call, we'll be happy to look in and take you around anytime you like.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, number 11. And Jackie, if at this point, if you would bring up the shared screen, is a discussion of the current fiscal year budget. This is something that I just think is good practice, and March 31 was the midpoint of our fiscal year. So and we're getting ready to start on next year's budget in a couple of months. So I wanted to just bring the court up to date on what things look like. The actual underlying document, let's go ahead and change the page, Jackie. There's a report that the treasurer distributes. I call it the budget analysis report. We get it every month, but it's month and year to date. So if you look at that March report, and it was north of 35 pages, so we're not going to go through it line by line. I've just picked out what I think are the big picture items to talk about, but would invite everybody to look at their individual department numbers. So here's the big picture. It's going to break down into pieces like revenue, courthouse, there wasn't much there, precincts, road and bridge, law enforcement, and don't have only one thing on dedicated funds. So let's flip the slide. Big revenue item for the county is taxes. Through March, we've collected 96.5% of the budgeted taxes for the year. A year ago, it was just under 96%. So that tells me that our tax revenue budget is safe, and there's still money that will come in, but there's no indication of a problem there. There's good news on the fines and fees front. We had anticipated that kicking up, but it's actually doing a little better than forecast. If it continues, the prior year, the court slowed down to a crawl with COVID. And that's everything. JP, county court, district court. So those are up. The big issues that are developing, and they're not bad, some of them are good. Prisoner boarding revenue is way up above budget on a pro forma basis. There are other expenses, though, that go with it that are a partial offset. We'll talk about them. Then we ought to talk about road materials and fuel. The hail repair is taking way longer than it needs to. It'll be covered by insurance, but it may be different amounts than we budgeted. So there could be budget variances there, but it'll be fully funded. And then finally, it looks like there are things that we budgeted on doing that we're not doing, or at least say we haven't started doing them. And that, when I say started, that means having bills that have showed up through the treasurer's office through the end of March. Go ahead and change the slide. This is a look at the tax revenue. It's just the detail behind that 96.5%. Shows by category. I mean, we get ad valorem taxes, we get road and bridge taxes, and we get what's called interest and sinking fund assessment. That's for the bonds. And then the bottom line is the total. And what this shows you is the actual tax collections last year, the budget for the current year, the actual collections through March. And you see the tax revenue sort of going down over time. If you look at the interest and sinking line, that's what's driving it. The amount due on our bonds has been gradually decreasing. We've tried to keep the rest of the tax assessment basically flat. So next slide, please. Okay, road materials. This is one that may be skewed. Again, this is bills that have been paid through March. So if you think about it, through March, if everything was equal, we would expect to be paying, have funded 50% of our budget. Well, what we've got is no apparent problem here. The biggest expenditure is in precinct 3, and with half the year, they've spent less than 40% of their budget. I don't know what, if any, implications to draw from this other than there's not a budget problem. Let's change the slide. This is fuel. This is where I expected to see problems based on what we've all seen at the pumps. We've got two groups that buy fuel, the precincts and law enforcement. So I'm showing them as separate lines. The difference is primarily the precincts fill big tanks intermittently, and I think most of the precincts went into the year with full tanks, whereas law enforcement fills up at the pump probably daily. So the fuel inflation is showing up real time in law enforcement. I think we have a lag in the precincts. I mean, we just looked at the payables. It showed a big fuel bill in precinct 4. They just refilled the tank. So, but that was in April, so that's not in these March numbers. So if you look at law enforcement maybe as a proxy, in 50% of the year, they've spent almost 70% of their fuel budget. And we'll, over time, unless prices tend down, we may see that in the precincts. What that, if you look at those totals, it may make, this is where we may be facing line item transfers later in the year. One place. Let's change the slide. Okay, the variances in the sheriff's office are worth talking about, maybe partially offsetting. In prisoner boarding's the big one. This is a revenue line. So in half the year, we've almost collected the entire full year budget on prisoner revenue. So implication is at the end of the year, we could be double the revenue forecast. So that's a good thing. Now, there are bad things, and the bad things may be a function of the good things. In other words, more volume does generate more expense. So if you look at, there's several jail expense categories, and I'm just lumping them, but it's everything from supplies and medical to food. At mid-year, those different categories are running between 60 and 100% of budget at the 50% point of the year. Overtime, again, mid-year is 100% of the full year budget. But if you back up to the bigger picture, the prisoner boarding at the end of the year, if it continues at this rate, will more than offset these negative variances we're seeing in jail expense, overtime, and even fuel. So that means you should expect to see line item transfers, but the bottom line is that there shouldn't be a net impact on the fund balance. Let's go to the next one. Here's the detail on the overtime. You can see the prior year, the current year budget, and then where we are at mid-year. And on a combined basis, at mid-year, we're 120% of budget. So let's go to the next slide. Projects not yet started that we budgeted. In the road and bridge category, we had big numbers set aside for road improvements. It was in various buckets, materials, overtime, and I think road improvements itself was one of them.
Yeah, road improvements.
Yeah, and that was concrete and, anything other than just raw materials. So we've got 306,000 plus left in that category. We budgeted $70,000 for jail transport van that hasn't been spent. So that money is still there. That project's still there. We budgeted for a phone system replacement in the courthouse. That hasn't happened yet and may not. So there's that money. And then we have budgeted, and this goes into the special funds, an ambulance station that was to be funded with an ARA, American Rescue Act grant. The grant amount is $946,000. Half that grant has been received. The second installment of it is due in May. So that money will be there. That project is not even come to the bid stage yet. All that we've got to show is a preliminary floor plan and a rough indication that the price was going to be just for the construction in the neighborhood of $650,000. That's a pre-bid guesstimate. So, and then if we increase the size of that a little bit to add anything on dispatching, it theoretically adds about 50,000. But the main point of talking about it in this context is the grant is adequate to cover it. So it's not a negative surprise, and it may be a source of funding. So we got the phone system, the jail transport van. I mean, some of these things need to happen, but they just haven't happened yet. Let's go to the next one. So what's coming up? Well, the next project is we get to do this all over again. The budget for the fiscal year is starting in October. There'll be a budget calendar published for the court in May with material from the treasurer's office will come out. We'll go through the usual drill. I don't need to remind the court how that works, but here we are looking at mid-year, seeing where we are and realizing that in a month, we're going to be starting this again for next year. So that's it on the budget. Before I move on to another item on the agenda, this was just presented for discussion, and I've been doing all the talking. So I'd like to see if the treasurer has anything she would like to add.
Unless somebody has a specific question.
How about the court?
On our road material, we had 50,000 budgeted for the year.
In the precinct.
Yeah, yes, in our precinct. We're showing 18 something. But we also about 8,500, trying to get it up to like $10,000 increments. So actually we are right on course for the year. We're
Yeah, and I've
better than
gotten
25.
since the month of April, I've used several dollars too, so that's not into that.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I was going to say that when you do a look at something at a point in time, there's always things that are,
Yeah.
you just missed the deadline. And so it's
And
worth mentioning.
also on our road improvement or our concrete projects, I was kind of waiting because normally springtime would be too wet to do anything. This might have been a
Yeah.
perfect year to do it in the spring.
Has dry weather harmed y'all any by, road materials trying to get them out on the road?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I've been stockpiling some of my material. I just started getting some of that, but they put me off because they had a bigger order out of McCoy. So that's one reason you don't see some of my money,
It's trying to powder out, but I mean, it's got rain sooner or later.
it's going to, hopefully.
Other discussion on the budgets?
Interesting on the interesting fact there on the overtime pay for the sheriff's office, they lost several employees last year that went and got trained and schooling and all that. They're still at the same overtime this year. So they were short employees a little bit last year, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I mean, there were the two Browns left at once, and then I think we sent at least one of the jailers to school. So there was quite a bit of overtime last year that I didn't expect to continue. Now, on the flip side of that, there was a large jury trial back in March
Yeah.
that had a lot of security up here. I mean, there were probably for 10 days seeing 2 or 3 or 4 law enforcement people in the courthouse all day long. I don't know how much of that is this overtime issue.
I don't know either, but I'm also on the handbook committee, and I know we approved several, without giving out information, there were several people in the jail that were ill when COVID was going through, and so I think that's correct. So they would be short staffed also when COVID went through the jail, and so you were down people because of pandemic.
Okay, well, thank you for your patience with that. I think it's a good review going into our next budget cycle. The next item, if you would load it, Jackie, is consider an act on 911 dispatching. This was on the agenda last meeting. I'll probably be on the agenda every meeting till we resolve it. So this report's intended to update the court on what's happened since the meeting. And honestly, some of it happened last night. Y'all got the overnight or late afternoon, evening emails, but I've folded that in here too. Let's change slides. Okay, at the last meeting, we tried to talk about the various deadlines because there's lots of moving parts. Just to refresh everybody, the termination notice from the sheriff was January 5th with an original deadline. When you worked the calendar, it came out to be May 10th. There was some social media stop the clock, start the clock, stop stuff that best I can tell moved that to May 24th. And then at the meeting last week, we heard verbally that clock had been suspended subsequently. And, depending on various dates, it was either a conversation about counsel with me on March 9th, or when he was talking to us in court on April 11th. Best I can tell, trying to work all that against the original deadline of 44 days, there's left with 120 days. There's left maybe 40 some odd days. It's squishy, and I know it sounds squishy, and it does to me too. Hamilton Healthcare also gave us a written termination notice based on the sheriff's termination notice. Their notice is dated March 10th and had specific dates, 2 termination dates. There was a breach date, which was 90 days, which works out to be May 31st. And that is for breaching the contractual agreement to provide dispatching. There was that a not for cause provision in the contract that I think was 180 days, and they gave that notice too, and that date would be August 29th. So let's go to the next slide. After the discussion in court last time, I went at the commissioner's suggestion, and I forget who, I went back to Hamilton Healthcare and asked them to extend their deadlines or withdraw them based on the verbal from the sheriff that we received at that meeting. Their response verbally was that they would agree to suspend or withdraw if the sheriff would put in writing his decision to suspend or withdraw dispatching. So on April 13th, I called the sheriff to put that in writing, and his response, and this is paraphrased, was he had to discuss it with counsel. So not a no, not a yes, but nothing in writing. And then since April 13th, up until yesterday afternoon, there was nothing from the sheriff. And so I notified him by email on the 18th that the county would need to proceed to protect the interest of its citizens. Let's change the slide. Okay, and then this is yesterday evening. No, it's not. But yeah, this is what I sent back on April 18th. And this was done with involvement of counsel, asking the sheriff to clarify his position and telling him we were going to proceed to protect our interest, absent a withdrawal of deadlines. So next slide. Okay, here's the response last night. Notice that I have suspended the clock on Hamilton EMS. Hasn't talked to counsel, trial, possible litigation, reached out to another service. They are ready to respond. Hopefully attorney will be in touch with court's attorney this week. And y'all will receive this directly. So the point is that if this presentation seems a little out of joint, this came in last night at 5:30 and or 6:30 and August, almost 7. And obviously the rest of the presentation for Commissioner's Court Monday was pretty well put to bed by last week. Let's change slides. Other things going on. Thanks to probably YouTube, this issue is getting relatively broad knowledge. So I had an inquiry from Coriel Health saying, hey, if Hamilton's going to walk, they're interested. Their interest at this point is verbal. They have similar requirements. They would require an operating subsidy payment from the county. They would need an ambulance station, and they would need dispatching. What's not known is how much is the operating subsidy. I'm trying to refine that. I've got a few facts together. Their current footprint, and Coriel Health is a hospital authority. That's different from a hospital district, although the only difference I can point to is a district has taxing authority and an authority doesn't. But they are a designated rural primary health care authority, the same type of designation Hamilton has. Their current footprint for the EMS is Coriel County, except Copperas Cove. Copperas Cove and its immediate area are served by the city fire department, which operates an ambulance service, as well as the city of McGregor. They are dispatched in their footprint by the Gatesville Police Department. Obviously, Gatesville PD doesn't have the reach to dispatch over here, but that's the current setup with Coriel. Let's change slides. What I'm asking the court for today is just approval or authorization for me to proceed on multiple fronts to continue to gather information. One big question is staffing. And I would like to run exploratory ads for dispatchers and a supervisor, not offering positions, but more saying we're considering this. Here are the qualifications. If you're interested, here's the phone number, please call. We're not going to accept applications. We're not going to solicit applications. But I think we need to know if we have 20 people in the county that are interested, or if the answer is closer to zero. That impacts decisions. I propose to start notifying regulatory authorities that we're planning an organizational move of 911 dispatching out of the sheriff's office. I purposely say organizational, may or may not be a physical move, but it would make it potentially another county department reporting to Commissioner's Court. I want agreement that I'm going to try and schedule a meeting with Texas Jail Standards over the potential continued use of the exact existing dispatch location in the law enforcement center. I've had some verbal contact that was positive, but it needs to get nailed down. And I would like to do this in an official capacity. And I'll want to continue to negotiate either interim or permanent dispatching agreements with the surrounding counties. Obviously, it would be an interlocal and subject to court approval. And you can see some of these things are one and not the other, but you've got to juggle all the balls at once to be able to come up with one that works. And finally, I'll be working with the treasurer and the sheriff to identify the appropriate line items and emergency budget amendments, if any, that would be necessary to pull this off. So that's the report on what's happened. This is what I think needs to happen next. But I don't want to get ahead of my skis, and I guess I'm not asking the court to approve this. I'm asking you to authorize me to continue down these roads. And if you got other ideas or don't like some of these, let's have time to talk about it.
Well, just what we've talked about in several court sessions before is, since we don't have a definite deadline on any of them locking it up until yesterday, now that kind of stops everything, correct?
I'm not sure. I don't get your point. The only thing that happened yesterday was the sheriff's email.
Right.
Now, what
But
hasn't
it
happened.
doesn't stop. It's not stopping it.
No, and I still have to go back to Hamilton Healthcare, because theirs is becoming the most immediate deadline.
Right. And
if we don't get on board with Hamilton Healthcare and get everybody to agree to take a deep breath, we're going to get forced into what's available.
You made mention of another provider.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's an issue that you can look further into.
Yeah.
And to me, like I say, there are other providers out there besides them.
There are. The complication is the dispatching. It's all the providers want dispatching. So we've got to be able to provide dispatching. And if we can solve that, yeah, I'm fully on board with giving the proper notices, going for a total reconsideration of who. But we can't do it without saying, here's how you're going to dispatch.
Yes, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that if we look at considerations on other providers, maybe we can get the sheriff's office to put it in writing that he would allow dispatching, that he'll continue to do that.
I would love that. Will you volunteer to get that? But that commitment needs to be for anybody, because otherwise you got an uneven playing field.
Well, I know what you're saying, but evidently there's a very big conflict. What started all this is between Hamilton and the sheriff's office.
Right.
That's the issue. and whether or not we can look at that possibility. And I mean, that's just a possibility we might look at.
Well-
Not saying we've done it.
I agree. I mean, since we do have a termination notice from Hamilton, we've got to look at other,
You do.
and
Yes.
that's part of what I'm proposing to do.
Yes, and I have no problem with that once you do what you're recommending the board to do, asking for.
I'm hearing from.
Did we
Commissioner
ever
Parker.
get any, response from AMR? You know,
No,
you guys,
no, I called him back once about almost a month after you and I met with them to ask if they would handle if they could give us anything on handling all dispatching, and got, he was going to run it up the flagpole and get back to me, and it went radio silent again. So they're not responsive to me.
Well, I really agree with the exploratory ads, because I'm scared that there's not the clientele, the personnel to work this. I may be wrong. I don't know what anybody's feeling in the public, so I don't, on the job part of it. So I'm agree with doing that exploratory, and yeah, I'm kind of agreement with, with you going and meeting with jail standards and seeing what that would save us a lot of money if we don't have to do anything. That would save the taxpayers a lot of money, and be also a lot of headaches there.
Well,
And I also see the conflict that it could have.
yes,
too.
but at the same time, I mean, we have some number of employees that are doing this right now, and they're wearing two hats, and they might prefer to wear one. But you never know until and it's not fair to go out there and ask them. But if we run an ad in the paper and a phone number and don't take applications, I may get some indication. Well, Mr. Hale, you're an invaluable resource.
We've got a notice from Hamilton EMS that says they're gonna terminate us,
Right.
either for cause or without cause, depending on how the unfiled lawsuit may come out. And we've got the sheriff's office, last I heard, you got an email saying that at some point in time, when they get a 911 call for ambulance, they're not gonna forward that to Hamilton EMS. And so you've got the sheriff's office saying they're not going to dispatch for Hamilton EMS. And you got Hamilton EMS saying we can't do this without somebody dispatching. Those are the two options, what you may like. You've either got to come up with a new dispatching plan that does not involve the sheriff's office, or you got to go with an EMS company that the sheriff likes. I mean, as I understand it, those are the two options on where we are right now. So I guess you got to figure out which path you want to go and try to get it done. We've got to have a reliable 911 answering and EMS dispatching service. That's the bottom line. Where we are right now doesn't look to me like it's very dependable. Look, we've gone through this exercise. I wouldn't think we'd want to have to do it again.
Well, do you have any suggestions on what the proposed actions that we're, okay.
Is there anything, doing that exploratory search, is there anything
Yeah,
against
I
that?
think that's a great
it's-
idea.
Yeah,
Kind of get a definite plan on what might work. You really don't know until you reach out and find out. So that looks like a good idea to me.
I make a motion that we allow the judge to do an exploratory search.
May I interrupt you a moment?
Yes,
Jackie, would you see if you can bring up that last slide of actions on the 911? Let's get what I asked for up on the screen.
okay, yeah, I got it. I was gonna read it.
Oh, okay. We'll go ahead. I didn't realize you had it.
Exploratory ads for 911 dispatcher and supervisor in the Eagle. Notification of regulatory authorities plans to organizationally move 911 dispatching out of the sheriff's office, to meet with jail standards, to negotiate an interim or a permanent dispatching agreement with other counties, and identify an appropriate line item and emergency budget amendments with those needed personnel. That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Commissioner Guerin. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, I will continue to have this on each agenda and report to the court as I learn. Okay, next item, number 13, American Rescue Act Revenue Replacement Election. This is treasurer asked that this be on the agenda. Let's see if I have anything. Do you want me to talk about it or do you? Okay, American Rescue Act was that federal grant. This isn't FEMA. It's the 942,000 something you saw on the budget review slide, of which we got half, and the other half is coming in May. The money was thrown out there way before the standards were. The initial preliminary draft was, had to be COVID related. That was the intent of the grant, to recover from COVID. Then, as refinements have happened over the intervening time period, that's been defined, expanded. I think broadband got into it. We have consistently looked at it and, okay, we need a ambulance station to replace one that's out of service and we can sell. And that, if we use the right language and as a pandemic treatment center, cleanly fits within the grant. And in every subsequent rule change, that assumption has held. Now, with any federal grant, you're subject to audit. Then they came into, well, you don't even have to do any of these things. You can use something called revenue replacement if you can prove that your county revenue dropped due to COVID. That gets a little bit subjective. I mean, we could show that our court fines and fees dropped. It didn't affect taxes. And then finally, and most recently, I think, and maybe politically, the rules have changed. Okay, if you're small potatoes, and that we'll just assume you were covered by your grant money is a COVID offset, and the small potatoes test is, I believe, $10 million of grant. So here we are sitting on 946,000.
So we're lower than small potatoes.
We are mashed potatoes. So the suggestion, and it came out of the treasurer's recent training, was if you apparently you have to make the election, but if you make the election that we're going to use the revenue replacement theory, it simplifies the reporting and makes the audit test almost go away, because the only requirements are your grant's under $10 million. Let me give it back to you now. Can you want to expand or correct on that?
Coming up on our annual reporting, so we are small potatoes, we only have to report once a year. That's March or April 30th. I have to provide this report, and we have to kind of provide a selection, and everybody at conference, anybody 2 million and under is taking the revenue loss. That's because it limits you to only reporting 2 lines instead of, they had Denton County there, and theirs was page, and one was page, and projects and project codes, and then you have lines how you had to expend the money. And basically, our two lines will be vendors that we spent 50,000 and over with, and everybody else on the second line. It's two lines, it's easy, it's once a year. And the president of the Treasurers Association said, anybody under $2 million really doesn't have to worry about an audit because the federal government is now looking out for ways out of having to, I guess, audit all these reports. They're basically giving you kind of a free.
We have a report due April 30. That's kind of what's driving this today, that in that report, Ms. Campbell needs to designate something. And her proposal, based on what she's heard from other treasurers, and I agree with it, is that we make the election that we are going to use the revenue recovery approach to use of the grant.
And now we do not even have to provide the calculations on that because we're so far into the money. And so I will be just checking the election of revenue loss, but no expenditure yet because we haven't spent any of the money. We can go ahead and elect to say we're going to use all that money for revenue loss if we want to, but we don't have to. We can do that as we expend.
Yeah. I didn't want to do this, to be honest with you, because it just tosses it in a pot. And then, we start buying equipment, giving raises, doing whatever we do with the money, with those strings on it. And it's one time, we could even lower taxes for a year, but then we couldn't raise them back. The money is one time, it's here, and then it goes away. So to me, the best thing to do with it is put it in a fixed asset that the county needs. So make a one-time non-recurring investment or expense and then be done with it. But this way we can still make that decision on how we spend it. Although we're no longer, once we make this election, we're no longer limited to that decision, but it solves reporting work. And more importantly, probably an audit risk of somebody coming back years later with their handout from the federal government saying, we disagree with this calculation or that assumption, we want our money back. So that's where I am. Comments?
Well, I agree that we need to use it for capital improvements more than we need to do raises or whatever. So because that's a yearly
And
thing.
that's not really what we're discussing with this.
Right, I understand that. I just meant,
But yes, they did say, do not, the president of the Treasurers Association said, do not throw this money back into your general fund. That
Gotcha.
is a mistake.
Okay. So you are.
Yeah,
all in agreement.
the only thing you absolutely cannot do is use this to fund unfunded pension liability. That's in the legislation.
Well, we talked about using part of this for the ambulance shed. Whichever ambulance service we go to, evidently, we're gonna have to furnish them a building. So
right.
let's just take it and earmark it ambulance shed. Then if there's any left over, we do something else. But let's do it that. I believe we do it that way.
Well, the motion, what we need the court to agree to is that for Mills County to elect revenue replacement
Correct.
as, help me with the rest of it, Ms. Campbell, as what? As our,
Our election for the use of the funds.
okay.
That's all I have to report on the 30th. After that, I can report the expenditures once a year. I can use it.
So I move Mills County elect the revenue replacement reporting for its American Rescue Act funds.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay. It's a long meeting. Commissioners request and reports. Commissioner Wright.
Been clearing right of ways on County Road 429. We had high wind damage on the precinct and some of the vehicles out there. It's not a lot more than you think there is on the buildings itself, on the precinct one building. I went to 93rd Judges and Commissioner School in Arlington, got my classroom I was over with, and I have a new hand started today, and we're kind of walking them through the process right now. Precinct one.
What's his name?
His name is Charlie Griffin.
Charlie Griffin.
He's has,
Not no cowboy anymore, huh?
you know,
Say he's not no cowboy anymore, huh?
I didn't know it ever was. I know that he was, he does a lot of ranch work for himself, but he's 3 years experience with TxDOT. He's got a class, a CDL Class A tanker endorsement on his license, and he's very knowledgeable and willing to work. So I think he'll make a good road man. That's all I have.
Commissioner Guerin.
We've been doing a lot of work on 323, filling in ditches and retopping that road. And that's what we've been tied up doing for the last week.
Commissioner Barton.
Got the tractor with a rock grinder from Jed now. So far, we've used it about a week. Seems to be fixed, hopefully. We've ground 3 or 4 roads. They're grinding one today. Try to get her grinding done, and then we're gonna try to get busy with these, getting some of these stand arms put in.
Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, and kind of what Mike alluded to earlier, we started work on County Road 540, which is way out Ebony Way. The material on the road is just sand, and it got so dry that you were getting stuck in it like it was mud. It was terrible. Checked with the local material person and scheduled everything and got out there and started working the road, went to get the material and they were out. So I ended up going to Lampasas to get material since I was in the middle of that project. What I would like to tell everybody, the material at Lampasas is a little more coarser, doesn't have as many fines in it. So it's actually working, maybe it was a godsend or something like that. It's actually working better on that sand. Let's see here. But the trip for me is taking 3 hours for one trip. And so long day of sitting there. Other than that, I have nothing else. That took all last week. Hopefully we'll be hauling for another week, Dale, and then we'll be ready. I mean, if you want to switch and haul or whatever, belly dumps, we can do that, or somebody else want them for a little bit. We're going to try to, when we get the rock crusher, we want to do 532 and also 418. So,
Well, that's, so we're trying to get a rock crushing that we had lined up done. Of course, like I said, these people are wanting these 10 horns put in, but we're going to try to get a rock crushing that we know we got to do done first.
anyway, I was hoping for more rain. But that's it. That's all the reports I have.
Okay. Only thing I've got, other than everything we've talked about, and it looks like I'll be busy. Commissioners Court in Lampasas County today was discussing assessing mills in other counties for the administrative staff in their regional DPS office. So I'll see how that came out and what's involved. It may or may not be a budget item. Interestingly, the San Saba response has been that rather than pay the assessment, they would rather have the regional DPS office. So we'll see how this plays out.
Really.
Yeah,
Everything's going to regional, isn't it?
yeah. Okay, I have nothing further. Is there a motion?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion from Commissioner Guerin. Is there a second? First second was from Commissioner Williams. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed.